The Human Target, issue 5. Tom King writing with Greg Smallwood on art.
Human Target and how much of a mind trip this one was. I had to read it twice.
Well,
so I got the full effect.
It does have an interesting concept for how this this issue is structured. So, what this is the idea that obviously Christopher Chance, along with Ice, go to meet J'onn J'onzz, right? They go to meet Martian Manhunter. And the idea is that the entire issue takes place in the space of a few seconds whilst he's passing Martian Manhunter the salt. He says, "Can you pass the salt?" He's passing it. And then we go into what turns out, because at first it's a little confusing because you're like, wait, what's happening here? Because it's like, you know, it's like remembering the night before when Ice and Christopher Chance are in bed together, and he references that a couple of times, but then he switches to Martian Manhunter, and you're like, wait, what's this saying? And then it sort of clicks, and you get that, oh no, this is Martian Manhunter looking inside his head, and that's why he became him in the scene, because he's sort of like looking into his head and like sort of reading him. What this issue does is that it gives us a backstory inside his head, which is where Christopher Chance first interacted with a telepath, and how he learned how when a telepath invades you, you can also read them at the same time. And it plays out and it bounces between that story playing out, his backstory, and all the secrets that Christopher would normally try and withhold from a telepath, but how he's actually sort of distracting Martian Manhunter by sort of making it look like he cares about all these secrets, when what he's really doing is reading Martian Manhunter's mind, and then in the exchange, if you will.
It's mental jujitsu. He's using the strength of the telepath against them to knock them off their base.
Yes. And ultimately uncovers some secrets that Martian Manhunter has about a secret affair he had with Fire, and how that led to him asking for money from Ted. We assumed it was money for Booster. That was kind of how it was presented last time. So that's I'm explaining all this up front, but just because I think it'll make it easier to talk about the individual things if we have the overall context for what's happening.
As I was reading this, and we're getting the overlays, right, where we have Chance and Ice laying in bed, and then overlaid on that same panel, it's Martian Manhunter and Fire, right? But we don't know the context yet. Right?
And they're also blend together because one of the sort of the main memories that we go into with Chance is him watching his father be killed by a hitman. Yeah. And you know, one of the first things we see when he's lying in bed with Ice is that there's like someone pointing a gun at them, and that never happened, obviously. But it's the idea that the memory and this memory from the night before are merging. You know, as J'onn is looking around in his head.
Yeah, I remember in my English class learning about the writing style of the stream of consciousness, and I feel this is a comic book version of a stream of consciousness story, because it's just kind of as you find out from the story, and how this is Chance's defense against J'onn while also being able to get the information he needs from a telepath.
Yeah, because he it sort of reveals that he kind of had like a maybe fling's not the right word, but with a woman from Titan, right, from Saturn Girls end of the universe,
right? And she says her name is Imra, but she doesn't look like, you know, Saturn Girl, but clearly that there's, you know, ties there.
I mean, this is not in mainline continuity, so it could.
No, but I know, but she doesn't even look like what Imra that we would recognize, you know. And at this point, we're playing with the Justice League International, who are all, you know, presented as how we would know them. So just the fact that she's a telepath from Titan, you know, that is enough here.
Do you know what I think's impressive about this issue is that it points early on, it's quite confusing. It's doing all these things, and you're sort of following it, and part of it kind of clicks. I think it's impressive that by the end of the issue, I think the entire thing makes sense. I think,
and that's
like, by the end of the issue, I completely understood which parts were like sort of the backstory that explains how Christopher is able to like fight back, you know, a Martian Manhunter in any way, shape, or form telepathically, and everything else is like his memories sort of bleeding together because that's what J'onn's looking at, and then ultimately it bleeds into J'onn's own memories with Fire, and it's like, oh, that's all. That like, by the end of the issue, I'm like, this made complete sense, and then ended it with the bookend of him like finishing passing the salt is like this all took place in about 3 seconds, if that.
Right.
You know?
And just the fact when you do go back and read it a second time with that in mind, how well how well the story's told on that level, like when you know it, it's almost like a magic trick, right? Where the first time you see the magic trick, you're just like, oh my God, how'd they do that? And then, if you see one of those magician specials where you see how they do it, and then you're still just like, oh wow, that's real clever. Again, this is an art form.
Yeah, because like I said, it does that thing where it transitions from like Christopher in ice in bed to Christopher turning to Jean, right? And it's like, oh, what's going on there? It's not too much later in the book where the opposite happens, where it actually does this thing where there's like 4 panels at the top of the page, and the top 2 are Ice and Christopher, and the bottom 2, which continue the image, but the bottom halves of this image are actually Jean and Fire. And then at the bottom of the page, it does the opposite of what we saw before, which is it's Chris and Fire lying in bed. So it's transitioned from the what happened the night before to this other like flip of the characters. And so it's actually telling you quite clearly that as Jean is looking in Christopher's mind, Christopher is also looking in his.
Yeah, right. And
really smart.
Once you know that too, and then you see how the panel's divided, like it's very symmetrical. But yeah, and then the backstory too, how that is intercut with the story of his dad and why that's the memory that he uses, is that you basically you make them think that this memory is the most important thing, because then that makes them focus on that, which leaves them open.
Yeah.
So, which then we get to the memory of how he learned how to do this from the telepath from Titan.
Just before we move on, but I was on the backstory with his dad. I didn't really know too much about his origin, Christopher Chance. The idea that he tried to jump in and like take a bullet for his dad, but then his dad get killed anyway, and this is like him saying, well, I tried to be the target for him, so I will now be the target for other. Like, I don't know. It made me chuckle in a weird way.
yeah. Well, that's a very Silver Agey concept, right?
But yeah. So it's good stuff. So you get this backstory where he's been trained by her how to defend himself. It's kind of like in Inception, like some people have been trained how to like deal with like.
That's what this made me think of.
Yeah.
Right. Is that she's kind of the Leo character, and he's the Paige character, and and then you see the craft at play later, which that's the only part that kind of confused me, because is that Lex? That's not Lex, right?
It's not Lex. No, it's just a bald guy, I think.
Right, but are we, because Lex is the one that's responsible for him in this predicament? Is that like his? I don't know. Is this his subconscious?
So yeah, it's turned into Lex in his mind, but it was never really Lex Luthor. Yeah.
Right, and that's because she even says that you use me as your shield.
Yeah, because I think it would be a pretty big deal if Lex Luthor paid to get his father killed in his backstory. Yeah. That'd be a pretty big notable thing to deal with. No,
yeah, but I'm just talking about him sitting from across the table with the gun.
Pretty much what happened in Smallville.
Carter, he didn't try to have his own father killed. He paid to have Christopher Chance's father killed.
So, because it seems so, Chance's dad, he says that he was good at math. So at first I thought maybe it was like a gambling debt type situation, because he says, "Oh, my dad's good with numbers," blah blah blah, and it comes to turn out that he was, something to do with some major, I would guess organized crime type deal. But the guy ends up looking like Lex, and it was just also just that person having the key to the spaceship, right? And that's what she used him to get to. That's it. Just got wrapped up in. Because that's a very Lex thing to do too, but I don't know how they wave him running into Lex early in his career and whatnot.
Also, I'm just remembering the Lex thing a lot. This bald character, because so he's this guy is paying Imra to train people how to fight back against telepaths. I mean, this could be Lex, actually. Now I'm thinking about it.
But it doesn't. To me, it just, in the overall arc of the story, it doesn't make sense for it to be Lex right now. With him, that's why I just think like Chance is seeing this person as Lex, but then there's some very Lex tendencies here. So that's the only part that I got hung up on.
That's could be
the rest of the story comes together super well, even on the second read through.
Yeah, this could be a seed for something later we're going to delve into. Possibly it'll come up with Lex at some point if this is him. Yeah, for some reason I was misremembering exactly how he popped up. Yeah, so this is the page with the Lex looking character.
Yeah.
Quite right. For some reason I remembered when we were talking about it earlier. I remembered him talking to the hitman, not her, which is why I was getting confused. So no, it all coalesces wonderfully. Yeah, it's hard to say. Like,
see.
I'm just like I'm trying to like put it into words like how beautifully this all comes together like by the end, because it really is confusing to start with, and then as you get through it and you start to sort of click all the different pieces into place and understand what each storyline's representing and what's actually happening in this minute, it's really good. I think really good. And I think part of it is the idea that like I would really question who some of the characters are like towards the end as they're talking to each other. Like, are they the ones that are being represented as, or is this like stuff in the head getting switched around with whoever's more relevant to them at the time, or whatever? Yeah, I don't know. Right. So yeah, I'm curious if people want to tell us in the comments. Do you think this is Lex who hired her to train him, and then Christopher kind of flipped it around on him to get the key thing for the spaceship?
Because it seems like the guy dies at the table with the blam blam, and then he slumped over.
Well, which is probably why I didn't think it was Lex after I read it.
And that's but again, him having a key to a spaceship that will take her back to Titan, very Lex. So I don't know. I also the other thing that stood out here is the Jean and Fire relationship. Knowing that Jean is, that's his weakness, is fire.
That's kind of funny. Yeah. It thematically makes sense as well. The idea that like the person you love is your weakness. That is something.
Well, and it seems that's what Christopher Chance's weakness is right now too. Is Cora, right? So like, and he has a thing for wanting to help these women
because there's a lot more than
capable.
Yeah, there's a lot of narration early on, and it's kind of unclear if he's talking about Ice or if he's talking about Imra in the flashback, because it kind of like they blur together. But he's talking about like don't show that you care too much, like hide it, pretend you don't care. Like he's saying things like that.
I mean, I think the answer is yes, because this is his theme.
Yeah.
And that almost like he got used, and I feel like they're hinting at later that maybe Ice is using him again. Or that's just a red herring, and they want us to think that because...
And to be fair, like in the flashback story, well, she does want something from him, and he helps her. Like, ultimately, she doesn't lie about it. At the end, it's quite... she says, hopefully you learn something from this, and, like... it feels like they leave in fairly amicable terms. So...
Yeah, man.
I don't know. But it was excellent. I mean, last issue was so good because of the build up to the actual like love scene, if you will, and the facial expressions. Like that was really good in a straight story kind of way. This was a very good like, not dreamed issue. That's not right, but you know what I mean?
But it is. It's very ethereal. Because it's hopping between,
and it's unconventional, and it's jumping around, and you have to sort of piece it together as you're going. But it does work really well once it kind of clicks what's going on, and you sort of like it clicks better and better as it finishes.
Yeah,
it really is impressive how much this makes sense by the end.
Yeah, Tom King and these artists just working hand in hand. Like I feel like King really knows how to write for each specific artist. Because we talked about it with Shaner and Garrett's, we talked about it with Fornes, we're talking about it with Smallwood. They work hand in hand so well. And here especially, I feel like Smallwood, for all the talk that we say that it's this kind of throwback art, here just the way that he blends all the different images together, and exactly where they are based off of coloring. and shading and all these other things. It works. Everything just works.
Yep, that's very good. And then even just the color schemes again being used here to differentiate which parts of the brain or the real world and which flashback we're in, and just the way it's bouncing around, it all flows very well. And even sometimes it'll like sort of show you that they're blending together, because it, like one will go very green, which is typically the Martian Manhunter and Fire stuff is the green stuff in it, but it'll creep into something else, and you sort of get this feeling.
Yeah, and then him and the telepath it's very muted, like the colors are browns and beige and so yeah, no, just again, this book.
Yeah. So very good. Good stuff. So yeah, it ends with him passing the salt, and it's just this completely innocuous thing. And obviously, he doesn't look like John Jones here. He's disguised as just a regular dude.
Someone.
Yeah. But that's obviously who it is. Otherwise, the entire story just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Pretty much. So, excellent stuff. Matt, what are you giving The Human Target?
I'm giving this one a 9.
That is fair. I am going to go 9.5. I gave the last issue a 10. I think I like that just a touch more, but there's not much in it, and the book's been phenomenal.
I mean, after all said and done, this could be the best crafted issue. But I still think the last issue, with how it played with Ted and them, it's really hard to touch that one. But we'll see. Especially because I know who the next issue is surrounded around. And I'm very excited for that.
Who is it, Matt?
It's Guy Gardner.
I knew. Deep down, I knew.
Maybe I should read that issue.
Yeah, and then we're getting a 6-month break, so you're gonna get to think about Guy Gardner for 6 months. So
that's upsetting.
Yeah.